Yo, what is going on, everybody? Here it is, finally, how to play Swordsoul in-depth guide. You guys know me. I like to make these in-depth guide videos that are geared towards newer players of an archetype or a deck. Make it as simple as possible to understand. So in order to do that, I just needed a little bit of extra time to actually play the deck myself because, well, obviously it's a new deck, so there's not really that much pre-knowledge you could get unless you actually played it in the actual TCG, which I do not play the TCG. So here we are, finally at the video. Thank you guys so much for your patience. I'm going to try a couple of new things in this video. I'll let you guys let me know if you like them or not down in the comments below. First thing I want to try that's a little bit different is I want to talk about the Swordsoul core rather than giving you deck lists straight up from the beginning. I'll have little timestamps in the video here, so if you're interested in just having a deck list and what to actually play, I'll put some sample deck lists later in the video. Just check the timestamp down below, or if you're just looking for the gameplay portion of the video, check for that timestamp as well. Now, what I wanted to do was talk about the core of the deck first, because in my opinion, Swordsoul is extremely flexible in terms of how you can play it. Swordsoul is more of an engine rather than a full-on deck, kind of like how Tri-Brigade was. This is kind of like the Tri-Brigade for Synchros. Tri-Brigade was for Links. This is for Synchros. I'm going to talk about two variants specifically, a more pure-oriented build that plays, you know, things like DPE and a bunch of hand traps, and a more Tenyi version, rather, which is going to be a little bit more synergy between the Tenyi archetype and the Swordsoul archetype. What is Swordsoul exactly? What is its strengths? What's its weaknesses? Swordsoul is a synchro toolbox kind of engine-y deck. It's got a very small core. What you see on your screen right now is all the core cards to play this archetype. I would not recommend me personally playing this deck without having all of these cards already kind of in your deck. Everything else can be filled out, and as you can see, a deck made up of 9 cards, well, it'd be more than 9 cards because you're going to be playing multiple copies of cards, but 9 different cards in the main deck and 8 cards in the extra deck leaves a lot of room for flexibility, which is pretty cool for Synchro, because usually when it comes to flexibility, it's more the generic side of things like XCs or Link Summons or something like that. What makes them so flexible and makes their core so tiny to begin with is pretty much all the Swordsoul monsters have the effect to bring out a tuner token. So it basically turns the synchro mechanic from requiring 2 cards to really only requiring 1 card. It's more like 1.5 cards because you have to fulfill a requirement to bring out that tuner, but usually the requirements are extremely simple to get into. Let's just jump right into it. Let's read over the cards and explain kind of what they do. First and foremost, probably your best starter card, Swordsoul of Mo Yi. This is going to be Yugioh. Definitely want 3 copies of this in any build that you end up playing with. This card says when it's normal or special summon, you can reveal a Swordsoul card or a worm monster from your hand to special summon a Swordsoul token. Now, because of how this archetype works, if you have this card plus any other Swordsoul or worm type monster, any one of them, you basically have full combo with this deck, which is pretty insane. 2 cards and your entire deck is unlocked, kind of in the same way Virtual World, but not so much because you don't have to have them on the board. This card just kind of unlocks everything for your archetype. There's another effect too. It's kind of just extra gravy at that point, where if you synchro summon with this card and it's sent to the graveyard, you get to draw a card, which is pretty cool for it. The tuner monster, that the token that summons out the tuner monster, is a water level 4 tuner. That's what they all summon out. So this archetype is going to excel at summoning level 8s and level 10s when it comes to that synchro toolbox that you have. Next up, we have Swordsoul of Taya. This one is you can banish a Swordsoul or a worm from your graveyard, and then you can special summon that token. And then if you synchro away with it, you can send a Swordsoul or a worm monster from your deck to the graveyard. You can kind of see how this deck functions very well with Tenyi, because Tenyi is all worms, so it'd be very easy to kind of stick this archetype into that. Next up, we have Incredible Ecclesia, the Virtuous. This card is really neat. It's got a lot of cool effects to go over. First things first, if your opponent controls more monsters than you do, so if they have 1 and you have 0, for example, you can just special summon the card instead of having to use up your normal summon, which is really good because that helps you play through the negates and hand traps and whatnot. During the main phase quick effect, you can tribute this card to bring out any Swordsoul monster, also Fallen of Albaz, but we're not playing that archetype, so that's irrelevant. Just the Swordsouls for us. And then during the end phase, if a fusion monster was sent to your graveyard, you can add it back to your hand. Again, that's not going to be super relevant, but sometimes it is if you happen to get a fusion monster on your board. But most importantly, bringing out that Swordsoul quick effect is going to be what this card is going to be used for. Card is also a tuner, so sometimes you can get into plays where you could special summon this and then normal summon another Swordsoul. If you're unable to get a token for whatever reason, you could still kind of make plays with her to tune with. Next up, we have Swordsoul Strategist, Long Yun. This one's very simple. You basically discard another Swordsoul card. Doesn't have to be a monster, Swordsoul card, or a worm monster. So if it's Swordsoul, any card. If it's worm, it can only be monster. Special summon this card from your hand, then you could special summon a token. This is level 6 with a token. Boom. This is where all your level 10 plays will be coming from. Then also when you synchro summon with this card, you do 1200 points of effect damage to your opponent, which can actually come into clutch when you're trying to OTK someone in a singular turn. So that's where all your level 10 plays are going to go through, and we'll talk about the combo with these Swordsoul cards as we get into it. We also have Swordsoul Emergence. This just lets you add a Swordsoul monster from your deck to your hand. Or if you control a Synchro monster, you can add any worm monster instead. So pretty much your entire deck if you're playing all worms. Added effect where if it gets banished, you can target a Swordsoul or a worm monster and increase or decrease its level by 1. Not super critical that you use this effect, but sometimes it does come in clutch when you're trying to make a certain Synchro monster. Next up, you have Swordsoul Sacred Summit. Sacred Summit lets you target a Swordsoul monster from your graveyard and resummon it, or if you control a Synchro monster, a worm instead. And then again, with the banish effect to increase or decrease levels. And then we have Swordsoul Blackout, which is actually extremely strong. You target any of your worm monsters you control and any 2 cards your opponent controls, and you destroy them. And then if this card happens to get banished, boom, you get to summon a free token on the board. Now, one thing to keep in mind with these tokens is these tokens, when they're on your board, you cannot special summon monsters except Synchro monsters, which most of your deck is, but a couple of your cards may end up not being Synchros. It might be some Link monsters. So be careful when using these tokens and you're not immediately using them for Synchro summon. Next up, we have Tenyi Spirit Vajutta. Even if you don't play this deck with Tenyi in mind, this card is too good not to play, even in the pure version of the deck. Tenyi is extremely strong and extremely powerful for plenty of reasons. The first thing that you can do with this card is you can special summon it for free. If you control no effect monsters, it just comes out for free. And then if you have a face-up non-effect monster, you can banish this card from your hand or graveyard to target a card your opponent controls and bounce it back to the hand. This is extremely easy to do because if you special summon this card for free, because you have no effect monsters, you can go into the Monk of the Tenyi, which will be your non-effect monster to trigger these effects. Pretty much all the Tenyis have that similar effect where if you don't control an effect monster, you can summon them and then immediately go into the Monk of the Tenyi and get all of their effects. This effect is basically just a 1-card removal, so it's just too good even in the pure engine not to play, just because of the removal options that it provides for you. So definitely recommend it to play this card. Last but certainly not least, we have Arch Nemesis Protoss, which must be special summoned by banishing 3 monsters with different attributes from your graveyard or face up in the field. It cannot be destroyed by card effects, and you can declare a monster attribute on the field, destroy all monsters with that attribute, and until the end of the next turn, neither player can special summon monsters with that attribute. The most important part of this card is it is a worm type monster, which means Using the Swordsoul emergence, we can actually search for him, and if we get our combo off correctly, we will definitely have 3 different attribute monsters in the graveyard available to summon this guy. And even if you don't know what deck your opponent is playing, just like hitting a blind dark attribute or a blind light attribute hits like half of the good cards in this game that's summoned. Very fantastic card, very, very strong. It's actually banned in real life. That's how strong it is. So easily searchable, easily powerful. Definitely recommend playing one of them in the deck. Next up, I want to talk about the extra deck, starting off with probably the most important combo piece in this deck. That's the Sword Master Shi Chao. I'm sorry, I'm going to butcher these names. I apologize. When this card is, or if this card, rather, if synchro summoned, you can add to your hand or banish a Swordsoul card from your deck. So that's kind of the combo that I was talking about earlier, where if you have this singular card and any other Worm or Swordsoul card, you bring out the token, you go into this level 8. That level 8 will give you whatever you want. You could add Emergence, you can add the Strategist if you don't have him to make your level 10, or you could just add Emergence to search Protoss, and then boom, you have your full combo off of literally just having this and one other card in your hand. Very, 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 very strong. And on top of that, he's still a fantastic card because quick effect, you can banish a Swordsoul or a Worm monster from your hand or graveyard, target one other effect monster in the field, and negate its effects until the end of this turn. Very, very strong. You get a free negate on that, which makes him extremely strong. You could even do simple combos like searching for the Swordsoul Blackout and setting up that. So then, you know, you get your monster negate, and then after that, you just pop this card and pop 2 cards your opponent has. Very, very, very strong. After that, it's pretty much the only other Swordsoul synchro you should really play is the Swordsoul Supreme Sovereign, Xing Ying. This is your level 10, which again, you'd use the Strategist to get into. It gains 100 attack defense for each banished card, and monsters your opponent controls loses 100 in attack defense. If this card would be destroyed by card effect, you can banish 1 card from your grave instead. And then probably the most important effect, if a card is banished at any point besides the damage step, if a card is banished, that means with Crossout Designator or with the level 8 effect, if any card is ever banished from either side of the board, he gets a very powerful effect where you can banish 1 card each from both your opponent's field and graveyard. They do have to have something in the field and graveyard. It can't be, you know, just one or the other. It has to be both at the same time. Non-targeting banish on both sides. You will be able to banish from. So extremely, extremely powerful if you have a banish card available and on hand to trigger his effect. Now, in all honesty, the rank 10 or the level 10 that you'll be going into most of the time will be Baron de Fleur. You guys know what Baron de Fleur does. I don't really have to explain her, but this is by far the best deck to play her in. It is extremely powerful. Once per turn, destroy a card in the field, and then once per its being face up, you can negate any effect. It's just an omni negate, which is really, really strong, and it actually has a very relevant effect where the level 9 you standby phase, you can bounce and then bring out a level 9 or lower monster. You could very easily just bring out your Mo Yi and get another level 8 synchro going, because you would get another token with the special summon after the Baron de Fleur ends up floating. Have Yazi. Yazi's level 7, so you are going to have to augment your levels a little bit if you want to bring him out. But he basically says you can target a Yangzing monster you control, and 1 card your opponent controls, destroy them, and then you just target yourself. And then when you destroy this card, when this card is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can special summon a Worm monster from your deck in defense position. So you can summon one of your other Swordsouls to go into a different synchro monster. Next up, we also have Crimson Blader. This card is just kind of nuts when you are able to effectively use it. Basically, if it destroys a monster by battle and sends to the grave, your opponent cannot normal or special summon level 5 or higher monsters during their next turn. So you could really lock someone out if you are able to get them, especially if you're able to like Ash Blossom like a combo piece and it's just kind of chilling there, not be able to do anything. You're able to extend kind of a stun lock to your opponent, because let's be fair, most decks use monsters that are level 5 or higher quite a few times, so very good card. We also have Boxia, Brightness of the Yang Zhang. This card, when it's synchro summoned, you can target up cards up in the field and return them to the deck up to the number of different attribute worm monsters that you bring out. The token is a water, so only your other starter, the Moyi, is also a water. So if you bring it out with a Taya, that is 2 cards, and if you bring it out with a Moyi, that's only 1 card. And specifically worms. So if you were trying to use Ecclesia, she's a spellcaster, wouldn't work if you wanted to do it with that. Next up, another level 8, we have Draco Berserker of the Tenyi. Amazing card. Basically, whenever a monster activates effects, quick effect, you can banish it. This is really, really strong, especially against things like Nibiru or things like Gamma and Driver, where they need to hit the board to actually activate their effects. In a way, you can kind of stop their effects from even activating by hitting them with this effect. And then on top of that, sometimes just if it's like a combo piece, if you're able to banish a combo piece, it just stops the combo outright and they can't do much of anything to you. Talking about the different builds, I want to start off with talk about the Tenyi build, because I do believe that this build has the highest kind of chance to end up being meta, if you will, in Master Duel, because of Maxi and Nibiru and how things kind of play in Master Duel specifically. I personally believe this will be the version everyone goes into. Not saying that the other versions are not viable, and we'll definitely go over at least one other version, but I just think that this deck works so well together, and there's so many extenders that it's just that good. So let's talk about the Tenyi cards specifically and what extra ones are going to be played. Starting off with the Adhara. Adhara is a tuner worm monster. Same effect. If you have no effect monsters, you can special summon this card. And then if you have that non-effect monster, you can banish this card from your hand or graveyard to target one of your banished worms and add it back to your hand. Of course, Swordsoul banishes a lot of worms, and then of course the Tenyi effects are very strong because they're constantly banishing and getting their effects off. You can use it for that purpose. Also, tuner level 1 lets you go into additional synchro plays and makes you a little bit more flexible. There's, of course, Maxi and Ash Blossom in here. This is an example deck list for the Tenyi version of the deck. You guys know what these cards do. If not, go check out my older videos where we talk about hand traps. I'm not going to go over them in this video. Definitely check those videos out, though. Tenyi Spirit, Santha, very, very strong. I think kind of underrated right now. Again, no effect monster, special summon, etc., etc. If a face-up non-effect monster you control is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can banish this card from your hand or graveyard, then target one of those destroyed monsters, special summon it, then you can destroy one monster your opponent controls. A lot going on here, but if you're able to get the effect off, this effect does not target, so you're able to get a free destruction effect and summon this card and bring back a destroyed monster. So you can destroy your own monster, for example, and boom, you're able to get extreme advantage from this card. Fantastic. I have Ashuna, which is kind of one of the harder ones to use. Again, you can special summon it if you have no effect monster, but this one you can banish it to bring out any Tenyi monster from your deck. You can summon just another Tenyi monster from your deck. The downside is you are locked into worm monsters for the rest of the turn, so you know, things like Baron de Fleur are now off the table. The good thing is pretty much the rest, anything that goes off the table, you have a replacement with Swordsoul, with worm monsters that you can summon. So it's not the end of the world if you end up getting locked, but you do have to keep in mind that this does lock you when you go for its effect. Of course, because you're playing the Tenyi, you want to increase your consistency. So we're playing Vessel of the Dragon Cycle, which basically lets you send a worm from your deck to the graveyard, which all your Tenyis have effects from the graveyard. And then if you control a face-up non-effect monster, you can add from your deck to your hand a Tenyi monster with a different name. So you can get some extreme value with the Vessel of the Dragon Cycle if you have your non-effect monster, which is super easy to get in this deck. Things to really add to this deck: Emancipator Ryzen. This is actually a card that you can kind of use in any Swordsoul deck, now that I think about it. Level 8, and basically basically you're only looking at the second part of the effect, where if your opponent activates a spell or trap and you have a water monster in your graveyard, quick effect, you can negate it. So if they have a threatening trap or spell for you, you can activate or summon this guy, and he'll give you some protection from it. And then also you're going to be playing Shaman of the Tenyi in here, since you're playing so much more Tenyi. And this card, basically, you can discard a card, target a worm monster in your graveyard, special summon it. Until the end of this turn, you can activate the effects of monsters that are special summoned for the extra, except Tenyi monsters. When attack is declared involving a face-up non-effect monster, you can target one card your opponent controls and destroy it. So you get some really nice non-targeting destruction. And then we also have the more pure version of the deck, and you can see this version is just basically more hand traps. You could also stick DPE in here as well if that's something you are interested in doing. This is my personal favorite way to play it, because I do love the recurring power of DPE. I also like the ability to use Crossout with, you know, the one of Nibiru and Forbidden Droplet. Crossout Designator is extremely strong because I hate going up against, you know, when I'm playing a synchro deck like this, going up against the Nibiru, going up against the Max C, and these cards are extremely easy to out if I have, you know, the necessary hand traps and back row to play. And you can see I just have so much space for it. And then, of course, being able to summon the DPE in this deck, DPE plus hand traps can win duels on its own. Most of the time, you're not going to be making Anaconda Verte. Most of the time, you're just going to be hard drawing the Fusion Destiny, using your Pot of Prosperities to get into it, and then you're able to summon the DP. So this is more of a traditional Tri-Brigade way to play the deck, where you're playing just heavy on the hand traps, and you're playing a small core that kind of gives you insane advantage, so you don't need to play a lot of monsters. So now you might be asking, well, Rye, which version should I play? And I think if you're going to play on ladder, it just kind of comes down to what your personal preference in the play style of the deck comes down to. Because both decks, I think, are very capable of hitting that Diamond 1 area. If you want to play more hand traps and want to play more disruption against your opponent and kind of stop them from playing the game, while also stop them, you know, from stopping you, right? Stopping Nibirus and stuff like that. Definitely go for the pure version. It is it's just got a lot more hand traps and a lot more options and more flexible going first or second. The Tenyi version, on the other hand, is definitely more of the kind of consistent explosive style, where if you are able to set up your turn 1, you just have an insane turn 1 that a lot of people aren't going to be able to get through. And if they don't open Nibiru, if they don't open Maxi, you're just able to destroy them by, you know, summoning a Baron de Fleur, summoning a level 6 negate, having a pop 2 and a Protoss Dragon all in a singular turn, with extreme consistency. You know, it's going to be a lot harder for them to do anything against you. All right, and now let me show you an example opening combo from this deck to kind of really show off just how powerful it can get. We're playing the Tenyi version here, but I'm going to try to keep it to basic combos that you can kind of do with both the Tenyi and the regular version of the deck. I'm just picking this up to kind of show you the basics. So here we have the Iglesia, we have the Maui, we have a lot of stuff that we can use here. So we're going to start with her. Use her effect to bring out any Swordsoul monster. We're just going to bring out another Mo Yi. Mo Yi plus any Swordsoul in your hand when normal special summoned. You could reveal that card. Boom. This lets you bring out a token, level 4 token. You use this token to go in to your level 8 Synchro. Your level 8 Synchro will let you add any of your worm monsters on, or I'm sorry, your Swordsoul cards to your hand. And then the Swordsoul Moe will let you draw a card. We want to put these chain links so we can get the draw first. That way we know what we drew, and then we can adjust our search accordingly. We got a Vajutta, which is really nice. We can now add the Emergence. We can add the Summit if we want to have a Reborn. We can add the Blackout if we want to pop. We're actually going to add Emergence here to the hand. We can activate the Emergence to then add our missing piece for our level 10, the Strategist. The Strategist, I can use his effect to then send any of the Worm or Swordsoul cards. Again, if I was playing more optimal, I would have my non-effect monster to have like a Vajutta effect ready to go. But we're just going to pretend we're playing with just the Swordsoul cards. Send this away. We bring out the level 6. The level 6 brings us a token. Then that token will transfer and become a Baron de Fleur. It was ideally what you wanted to summon first, or if you want to be aggressive, you could summon the other level 10 for a more aggressive push on your opponent. But this is kind of the board that you'll be kind of ending on with whatever hand traps you are playing. Obviously, in the more DPE pure Sword Soul, it's going to be a lot more hand traps that you'll be playing. But you can see I have 2 Max Cs in this variant. You have a hand like this where you're already kind of set up. Again, we have a bunch of the Tenyi monsters. We're not going to talk about those quite yet. We're going to keep those kind of in the back and just show you the Swordsoul portion of the deck. Again, we bring out the Mo Yi. She brings out the token. This is all the normal part of the combo, but you can see I already have the strategist part of my combo set up. This is guaranteed that I can get the Protoss Dragon because now I can go to my Grandmaster. Again, we get our draw. And then this time when we search for the emergence, we're going to have a different setup. There, we actually top deck the emergence. So because we top deck the emergence, we can add literally any other card that our heart desires. I'm going to go blackout this time, but you can add the reborn. You can add whatever you want, whatever your heart desires. You can go into your strategist play now, discarding that whatever you want. He summons out. You bring out your level 10 Baron de Fleur again. Baron de Fleur, extremely powerful card. This is probably the best deck to end up playing that Baron de Fleur in. And now because we control synchro monsters, we are able to activate that emergence. We activate emergence. Emergence lets us add all the way down here our Protoss Dragon. And then we are able to go ahead and special summon that Protoss because we are able to start with one of our combo pieces already. Banishing from the graveyard these 3. The Protoss Dragon shows up. I can activate Protoss. We can declare Dark, for example, because he is already on the board. He cannot be destroyed. Boom. All Darks can now no longer be summoned from the game. And then, yes, I don't have anything to banish from my graveyard, but I would have things to banish from my graveyard if I actually played the Tenyi portion of my deck and, you know, summoned the Tenyi Monk and had another additional card in the grave for the Grandmaster. And then we also have Blackout. So look at this crazy board. This crazy board, we would have a Monster Negate with the Grandmaster. We have an Omni Negate from Baron de Fleur. We are locking our opponent out of Dark summoned monsters or any other attribute that's on the board, but we pretty much want to hit Dark because, you know, we don't want to pop our own monsters. This card specifically cannot be destroyed by card effects, so he's safe. And then we also have a pop 2 by popping the Grandmaster after we don't need him for usage anymore. And then, of course, next turn, Baron de Fleur in the standby phase can go back into the deck and resummon one of our level 4 or level 9 or lower monsters for further plays. Extremely powerful board for very little card economy. Usually, this is where I put gameplay of the decks that I talked about in my videos. Sometimes the Master Duel duels do go on for an extended period of time, so I'm going to try a replay this time. But if you definitely want to check out more live gameplay, make sure to head over to my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/DLE Yugioh. It's down in the description down below. I have VODs of me full play testing Swordsoul. We also have me just playing Swordsoul kind of, you know, on the daily right now because it's the new deck, it's the new hotness. This was a really cool game that I had against. It was actually a mirror of Swordsoul. I believe this guy used the Tenyi version of the deck, and I played a more hand trap heavy DPE variant of the deck. And while the first 2 turns aren't super exciting because of hand traps, the turn 3 I really pop off, and I wanted to show you some of the combos that we can do with this deck. So first things first, I pot a Prosperity. He's actually going to Max C me. Boom, there's the Max C. And because I have Max C as well, I wasn't super afraid of what his deck could possibly do to mine. And usually if someone shotguns Max C this early, it's kind of a desperation play on their part. So I took a little bit of a gamble and said, you know what? I'm just going to search a bunch of cards. I'm not going to summon anything. I'm going to hold on to my hand, and I'm going to chill and wait. Bit of a gamble, but it works out for us. He goes in, he's playing, I realize at this point he's playing Swordsoul, so I know exactly how to counter him. He goes for his quick effect summon. I wait for his summon to Max C of my own, and I'm like, all right, however much you go in is how much I want to draw. And I also have Forbidden Droplet to stop the initial Swordsoul Mo Yi, which makes him extremely slow now that he's used his normal summon. We're going to go ahead, discard one out of our Sword Soul monsters. Again, remember you have basically full combo with the Moe and the Strategist, so you don't need anything else for your combo. Everything else is expendable for that Forbidden Droplet. We go ahead, we go in for the negate. She drops one card, swings in, it's irrelevant, whatever damage, 850. And then from here, we're going to actually kill her in a single turn. That's right, one turn, and we're going to completely take her out. I draw another Sword Soul. We go for the normal summon, bring out our token. With this, we go into our Synchro Summon. Synchro Summon out our Baxia. Now, Baxia, remember, we can go ahead and pop, or rather spin back the card from the field into the deck. And then we get a draw from the Synchro. But Baxia also has another effect that I actually failed to mention, but we'll mention it right here when it shows up. We go in, we make our level 10. Here's our Baron de Fleur. We get our 1200 damage here. Baron de Fleur pops the monster, and we're actually going to set the Pot of Prosperity because the Baxia allows me to pop any card once per turn on my field, pop a card, and resummon one of my level 4 or lower monsters, which we are going to summon the Taya, which we have not used the effect of this turn. We banish another Sword Soul from my graveyard, bring out another token, go into another Synchro Shokan, go into the Zhao, and that is going to be lethal with the 1200 damage. Boom, OTK applied pretty much as soon as I could fight. Obviously, I couldn't do anything turn 1 because you can't attack turn 1. That's just basic Yu-Gi-Oh 101. Maxi for the BM, boom, GG's. Very fun game. And that is pretty much everything to talk about Sword Soul. It's actually kind of an easy deck to get into, but there's a lot of lines of play once you kind of delve deep into kind of what you can synchro into and what builds to play. And it's a very flexible deck because it's not a deck, it's more of an engine rather than a pure deck. The pure version is the same exact mindset with Tri-Brigade, where the pure version plays a whole shitload of hand traps, where the Tenyi version is more of a super consistent, that turn 1 board that kind of more like an Emancipator deck, if you will. I think whatever build you end up using, I hope this guide helped you a lot in figuring out how to play the deck, playing the basics of the deck, and how to play, more advanced formats with the deck if you decide to go for those more advanced versions of the deck. Again, if you want more gameplay clips, definitely check out the Twitch channel because I'm starting to live stream more of me just playing Master Duel, and I am in love with the Sword Soul deck. I love playing it. It's extremely fun, and I love playing the different variations of it and practicing new things and learning new things with the deck as well. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Until next time, peace out, boys.